One of the main features of the KCB Kenya National Rally Championship are the varied conditions competitors face with the events located all around the country. For the 6th round in the 2009 series, the route would be different again, taking place across the harsh and unforgiving Kajiado Plains to the south of Nairobi.
The first stage is all graded, a flat out section. I think whatever the cars have, 200 plus, they'll need all that. The second stage, the 14Ks, that's a flat out as well. The third stage is very fast. People have to be cautious, bad drifts.
It was the KCB Visa Card Rally. The rally attracted a full house and 43 cars passed through the pre-event check. Carl Tundo has been in command of the championship throughout the year, but having failed to finish the last 2 rallies, he desperately needed a good result on this event if he was to stay ahead.
As I said, after the 3 wins, something would go wrong. Now it's going to go the other way. The opposite direction now, yeah. I've had my bad luck. Now all the good luck's coming.
Lying second and the favourite to win was Lee Rose, who had secured a new sponsor which guarantees his participation in the remaining rounds. Baldev Chaga would be leading the Subaru attack. Following his role in the previous event, the car had been totally rebuilt, and Baldev was committed to winning this one.
I think all the guys in the top 6, when we come to rally, our mission is to win, and that's about it. If we don't win, we come second or third, it's satisfactory, but winning is the key issue, so that's what we all look at.
The event was being organized by the Kenya Motor Sports Club, and it was at their clubhouse that the cars were held overnight. An impressive lineup of performance cars, all in peak condition. The following morning, the cars headed to the small but bustling town of Ongata Rongai on the outskirts of Nairobi. As early as 7 a.m., the town was a busy place, and although the passing of the rally would be the highlight of the day for the residents, it did not interfere with regular business. The title sponsors, KCB, have a presence in almost every town in Kenya, and it was outside the local branch that the rally would start, flagged away by Honorable George Saitoti, who had presided over the opening of the bank 19 years ago.
I think it is very fitting that you decided to launch this function here at Rongai, because this is one of the town which is growing very fast in Kenya today.
Ian Duncan with Amo Sludge had been drawn number 1 and led the field away for what would be a full day of competition.
3, 2, 1. The vehicle moves around, leaving very fast to the 6th edition of the KCB Visa Card Rally.
The transport to the first stage passed the service park, but on this occasion was only visited for fuel and tires. The rally covered 202 competitive kilometers split into 3 stages, which were repeated twice. Stage 1 and 2 would be flat-out motoring, interrupted by hundreds of yumps, with Stage 3 the real test, 42 kilometers of hard motoring through a rocky landscape. Setting the early pace were Alistair Kavanagh and Salem Haji, who were quickest through Stage 1. Then on Stage 2, a rear trailing arm snapped in half, and for the second consecutive event, they were out.
But no, it's annoying because that's probably the end of championship chances now, I would think, for this year. Unless, well, let's see, there's still 2 events to go, but I don't think there's much hope now.
Baldev Chaga and Raju Semi only dropped 1 second to Kavanagh on Stage 1 and were then quickest over Stages 2 and 3, opening up an overall lead of 20 seconds. The pace of their attack had been hard on the car, and both front wheels had been damaged, but they'd set themselves up nicely for a win.
Car feels good, but it is really, really loose out there. It's very easy to make a mistake and put it wrong, especially in the 3rd stage. This blind drift will definitely catch out a few people if you're not careful. We've been in 2 of them already, but lucky enough we're not that fast because we tried to brake late and get a bit of time. But
the priority for Carl Tundo and Tim Jessup was a finish, and they'd started the rally cautiously with this in mind. In retrospect, it was a good strategy as they gauged the pace of the others, But when they passed their teammates, stopped on stage 2, the adrenaline began to flow, and by the end of stage 3, they had slipped into second.
Yeah, I tried because I lost almost 30 seconds to the leaders on this first long section. So I committed myself over some of the rough, but then Tim's note calling was a little bit erratic and slow. So it wasn't a perfect drive. That's to come.
With his regular navigator not available, Lee Rose had enlisted Ugandan Moses Matovu to call the notes, and it was not long before they got used to each other. They were held back when they found the suspension settings too soft for the hundreds of yumps, but in between set a blistering pace and settled into third.
There's a lot of big loose rocks on the surface, and you're worried about the one that is not loose that's going to give you the puncture. So yeah, difficult not to slide and just take it easy. We've managed to get through unscathed, which is, as I said, that's what I wanted to do.
Of all the cars in the event, the rally suited Ian Duncan and Amos Sludge the most. With higher sitting position and bigger wheels, they could avoid the rocks better. But when the center diff became unbalanced, the car handled more like a two-wheel drive. Without the penalty of 2%, they would have been leading, but as it was, they were in fourth, 30 seconds behind. Punctures would inevitably play a major role in the event, with so many rocks to negotiate, but hardest hit early on were Azar Anwar and Julius Gige. Added to this, the intercom packed up. All in all, it was not a good start, and this spin only added to their frustration. They were lying 14th.
I kept saying on recce, and after that till today, till the start of the rally, that we really have to avoid punches, we have to avoid hitting rocks, So we went mentally very prepared, but I keep hitting those rocks, so I think I can't drive anymore.
Quinton Mitchell and Tim Challen were forced to sit in Azar's dust when he pulled out ahead of them after their first puncture.
Okay, let's relax it. Okay, so
when the road was clear, they were matching the pace of the leaders, despite having to struggle with the rear wheel, which was out of alignment. They eventually got ahead of Anwar on stage 3 when he punctured again, but the time lost put them down in 5th.
Over crest, 150, left 5.
Izar Mirza and Ashad Khan's plan on a top placing looked all set until they hit a drift too hard, relocating many of the engine parts. They got the car going, and although the intercooler was overheating, they continued, and their perseverance rewarded them with 6th place. After the first 3 stages, which placed the rally at the halfway point, Baldev Chaga was in the lead by 20 seconds. Only the top 4 were in contention for the win, but it was Chaga who was under the most pressure. 3 cars had entered the classic car category, led away by Stefano Rocca and Franco Donadel. All 3 cars were variations of the classic Datsun 240Z, and Stefano Rocca in a 260 was clearly the fastest, opening up a lead over the others of 2 minutes on the first stage alone. Then on stage 2, they landed heavily after a jump, breaking a lower ball joint, and they were out. This gave Romy Bamra and Havinder Jutli the lead in the group. They were pushing the 240Z hard, but on stage 3 they punctured and the rear suspension collapsed. They had a lead of nearly 8 minutes over the third classic when a half shaft broke, and they were also out. The remaining 260Z was driven by Jonathan Savage and Gavin Lawrence, and all they had to do was to finish to win the category. During the year, Jonathan had been competing with the car in Australia and had only just brought it back to Kenya. They were using this event as a shakedown for the East African Safari Classic later in the year. The car never missed a beat, and they went on to not only be the best classic, but also came 12th overall.
It was beautiful. I mean, a few Ks really rough and rocky, and it was just a matter of crawling over that. But the rest of it, I loved it. Absolutely. Yeah, great. Really good.
There was no change on the Classic Car Cup board, except for Jonathan Savage, who appears for the first time in 4th. With the rally taking place so close to Nairobi, spectators were spread out all along the route, but most chose the drift at the end of stage 1 to see the cars. Kenya is in the grip of a drought, with little grazing for cattle and goats, which has reduced the wealth of the locals to borderline. There has been no rain in the area for the past 3 years, which was evidenced by the many dry riverbeds. In the wet, the drift would be impassable. The temperatures were in the 40s, and the heat rising off the roads only made the rally even more difficult. In the two-wheel drive category, 10 crews were taking part, the highest entry of the year. Championship leaders Jasmine Chana and Sudhir Tati were flagged away first, planning to leave the others in their dust.
Jasmine Chana leaving the ramp.
Jasmine Chana and Sudhir Tati knew that if they were to win, they needed to gain time early on, and achieved this by being quickest through stage 1 by 25 seconds. Munir Khan and Sam Jethwa have had a good season to date, which has gained them a podium place in the championship, and they set off to gain even more points on this one. They quickly caught the car ahead on stage 1 and made a brave overtaking maneuver in blinding dust. With the road clear, they pushed the ravine hard, but on such a competitive event would only come 6th. After the first 5 events of the season, the championship race looks destined to be between Jasmine Chana and Leonardo Baresi. Leonardo chose to be cautious rather than go after Chana and lost time on both stage 1 and 3 and had to accept 4th.
I never found the rhythm in the last stage because of the rocks, so we decided to take it easier.
Adnan Suhail and Zahir Shah in the very quick and nimble Daihatsu Special were quickest over stage 2. At the end of stage 1, they'd been lying 5th, and the stage win moved them to 4th. They then recovered another place on stage 3 to clinch 3rd by 1 second. James Karimi and Kimeli Korir were the dark horse amongst the group. They were driving faster than ever, which resulted in them going off 3 times during the event. At the end, they were rewarded with 2nd, having missed winning by less than a minute.
We went off into the bush, hit a few rocks, and yeah, we damaged the left Sukap Suba. Completely done. But we managed to get back to the road.
Having gained the time on stage 1, Jasmine Chana and Sudhir Tati paced the remainder of the event, leaving the others behind to battle it out. They backed off on stage 2 and then pushed again on stage 3 to be 2nd quickest, but had held the lead throughout the rally. This was their 4th win of the season in the category, and the points gained will now make them hard to beat in the championship.
We went out, for full attack because the gap between me and Leo was still a bit little, and we wanted to widen it, so we went for it.
Just beat China and Sudhir Tati.
It had been a closely fought rally amongst all the top 5, although Charles Kinga will regret having not been quicker earlier on. All the cars in the category finished, with Jasmine Chana and Sudhir Tati eventually winning by 50 seconds. In the championship, positions remained unchanged, although Jasmine Chana has extended his lead to 29 points. Focus will now be on who comes 2nd, with 2 rounds remaining. It was out on these stages that the real action was taking part, but for the rally leaders, it would end in disappointment. The gearbox on Baldev Chaga and Raju Semi's M12 seized on stage 4, leaving them stranded in the middle of the stage. Carl Tundu and Tim Jessup inherited the lead, but could not match Lee Rose's pace and dropped to second on stage 5, having given away 19 seconds. Lee Rose and Moses Matovu were the quickest of the leaders through both stages 4 and 5, and with only one 42-kilometer stage remaining, were in the lead by the narrow margin of 12 seconds. With Chaga out, Ian Duncan and Amos Slatch gained a place to slip into third. With the last stage suiting the pickup, they were still in with a chance of winning, although gaining a minute on the Evo 9s would be hard work. Quinton Mitchell and Tim Challen were in a vacuum in fourth, but if they could reach the finish, this would match their best result of their rallying career. It was not to be. The ignition coil melted and they were out.
This is an ignition coil which controls 2 of the cylinders for the sparking, the firing. So with this gone, it just shorted out. You can see it's melted here. It was only firing on 2 cylinders.
Also out were Izzar Mirza and Ashad Khan. They'd burst the fuel tank and it was understandably unsafe to continue. The rally was a real challenge to the cars and crews, and the harsh conditions would eventually claim 18 of the 33 starters, over 50% of the field. With only one stage remaining, Lee Rose held on to the precarious lead of 12 seconds, and with Tundo and Duncan snapping at his heels, the final stage had become the most important section of the event. With so many cars dropping out of the event, only 3 crews in Division 2 were still running. This is Jaswinder Chana and Bill Kirk out with a broken camshaft. Anthony Nielsen and Mike Ogopit would come second amongst the group and 7th overall. Running on a low budget, they'd not been driving 100% to preserve the car, but even at this pace, they'd been well inside the top 10 all day. Asad Khan with new navigator Salim Khan will remember the event for the number of punctures they had, which eventually saw them finish 20 minutes behind the leaders in 9th. In between, they'd been quick enough to take 3rd in Division 2, and the points gained would elevate them to the head of the table. Assad now leads the division by 15 points, but with 20 points for a win and 2 rounds remaining, any of the top 5 are still in with a chance. The majority of cars still running were in Division 3, but even here, the attrition rate was high. This is Tariq Hussain and Faisal Khan, who ended their rally amongst the rocks on the highest point on the route. Sandeep Jandu and Gurmeet Mihangra were forced to an abrupt halt when the electrics in the cockpit caught fire.
The wires caught fire and we had to come out with an extinguisher.
Who came out first?
both of us. It was quick. It was quick.
The favourites amongst the Division 3 drivers had been Ben Mushemi and George Joroge, but listen to the engine. The camshaft sensor wasn't working, which upset the computerized management of the car, and they became spectators. The main contenders in the division included Kirit Rajput and Ravi Soni, who would eventually come out on top, leading the next Division 3 driver by a clear 12 minutes. They would also finish 8th overall, despite not being comfortable on the slippery surface.
We just didn't get into the pace from the first stage. Felt that the car was twitching quite a bit on high speed. I thought there was something wrong with the car, so I actually backed off. Then when I just got back into service, I realised it's happening to everyone. So,
Said Hamad and Victor Okundi had the most at stake in the division, needing to score well if they were to retain the division lead, but they were finding it difficult to fully commit themselves. Watch closely as they pass our camera on the final stage as the rear tyre tread comes off. With the road surface so rough, they only became aware that they were missing the wheel when they were forced into a spin further up the road. Once it was replaced, they went on to finish second in the division and 10th overall. Finishing third in the division were Gianluca Schiraldi and Fahaz Khan, who were getting in some practice before the East African Safari Classic. They would finish 14th, with Gianluca being the youngest driver to finish, gaining him the KCB Youngstar Award of the event. In the Division 3 standings, Saeed Hamad retains the lead, but Kirit Rajput is becoming a threat, having jumped from 4th to 2nd. Up at the front, the leaders were tackling the last stage of the rally, and with the times so close, the outcome would depend upon who was brave enough to fully commit themselves on the final section.
Just keep going, huh? I'll tell you when I'm back on.
Azhar Anwar and Julius Giga were driving defensively as they clawed their way up the leaderboard from 14th after puncturing twice earlier in the day. They gave a final push, and although they were only 4th quickest through the stage, it was good enough for them to move up to 5th. Asad Anwar and Kashif Sheikh were also driving to recover the earlier time lost, but being over 10 minutes behind the car ahead, it was more a case of retaining their place on the leaderboard. They were 3rd quickest through the stage, achieving the goal of finishing 4th. Lee Rose and Moses Motovu started the stage 12 seconds in the lead, and only by being fastest would they take the victory. They were dusted briefly by a back marker and then punctured. After the change, they hit a drift hard which left them with no brakes. The back marker had got ahead of them again, and all in all, they lost over 8 minutes in the stage, dropping to 3rd.
We came up to a two-wheel drive Alpha who dusted us for a while. We eventually managed to get past him and then picked up a puncture because we couldn't slow down for the rocks. So we pulled over, changed the puncture, and he went past us again.
All the front runners were in Mitsubishis, apart from Ian Duncan and Amos Sludge in the National Oil pickup. Although they pushed it hard, they could only manage to be 2nd quickest, but with Rose dropping back, they moved up a place to take 2nd. Considering the cars they were up against, this was a superb result.
I mean, okay, this rally was it was better for us. Even on the rockier stage, we're still not the quickest, so I actually think they should give a penalty to the Group N cars instead of us. But yeah, it was a good rally.
The rally belonged to Carl Tundu and Tim Jessup, and at no time during the event had they been far off Max. On board with them on an earlier stage, they had taken the car to its limit of just under 200 kph. This is what it takes to be a champion. They were quickest through the final stage, clinching the lead from Rose and keeping Ian Duncan at bay. Carl Tundu and Tim Jessup have now won each of the 4 rallies they have finished this year, making them the most successful crew on the circuit.
It's been good, yeah, it was hard. I really enjoyed the last section. There was seconds in it between Lee and myself.
It sounds as though you were quite brave.
Yeah, there was a lot of chances taken. That's talk of just being on the podium went out the window when we saw how close it was.
Only 15 of the 33 starters completed the event, with Carl Tundu winning by just over a minute, although the real winner was Ian Duncan, whose time includes a penalty of 2%. The time differences were a reflection of how hard the event had been, and the biggest reward was finishing what for most had been a marathon. Carl Tundu's win extends his lead in the championship to 75 points, and whilst he can't be declared the champion yet, he will be hard to beat. Focus will now be on who comes 2nd. In the KCB Youngstar Challenge for drivers under the age of 27, the only finisher was Gianluca Schiraldi, who moves up a place to 5th.